Can email be sexy again? Today on Future Forward, we investigate.
Then Sabotage Marketing. GrubHub cries foul.
Is a robot gardener in your backyard's future?
I'm Alexa Scordato.
I am Steve Rosenbaum, and let us launch. Hey, Alexa, how are you?
Hey, Steve.
Let's play
Great, how are you?
We should play the game we've been playing every day for every week now for a couple of weeks. Where in the world is Alexa Scordato?
Firenze. Florence.
How do you say that? Firenze.
Firenze. In Italian.
And by the way, just a little check-in with World Tech. I mean, we've now been doing this from around the world for a bunch of weeks, and you have rock-solid Wi-Fi wherever you go.
That's a feature.
Yes, indeed it is. All right.
Feature.
So we've got 3 chapters in today's show. The first one is email old tech or ripe for improvement, innovation. And then the second chapter is about sabotage marketing. And then the third is robot gardeners. And before we get into the show, I just want to remind our listeners, we're not asking for any money. We're not asking for donations. We're not selling shirts. But we would really like reviews on iTunes or likes or stars or however you want to say something nice. Very helpful for us to see traction in the likes and fans category.
Got a shout out to my brother. He listens to this regularly. I'm counting on you, John.
All right, John. We want to see John's review in there. By the way, you can be critical. We don't need raves, although we like raves. The other thing is a huge shout out and thank you to our friends at IEEE Spectrum. Amazing editorial partners, and we've got a great story from them this week. They're our chapter 3, but we will start with chapter 1. So chapter 1, Alexa, are you a user of this thing called Superhuman?
I'm not, and I've heard so much about it from people who are VCs and entrepreneurs, and then there was this big New York Times write-up about it with the headline, "Would you pay $30 a month to check your email?" And after reading the whole piece, I still was not intrigued enough to bite the bullet.
See, and they've got me. I'm so sorry. So let's go back and explain to our listeners what we're actually talking about. So this is a buzzy startup called Superhuman, and it is a $30 a month bill, which for those of you who don't do math off the top of your head means $360 a year. So it's no joke cost to improve email. And you know, I have said for a while, listeners of this podcast will remember that I kind of on a somewhat of a loop grumble about the fact that the biggest problem with free is that it makes it impossible to innovate. And Gmail has essentially eaten the world and made it impossible to innovate in email because everyone goes, well, you know, Gmail's good. I like Gmail. So at first, let's start with the good news about Superhuman, and then we'll get to the not so good news. The founder is a former email startup success story who essentially thinks email could be way better. And there's a list of features. I don't know if we need to go through them, but essentially it automates and adds AI to all kinds of things that we suffer through on a daily basis. For those of us who are buried in email, and Alexa, I assume you get as much email as I do. Well, though, no, maybe not, because you're younger. So maybe your peeps have all moved to messaging anyway.
No, I still get a lot of email.
But is the junk to relevant quotient right for you?
You know, this is like a totally different podcast, but I think Slack has replaced email, and it's just as bad. Like, okay, I check email less, but now I have 50,000 Slack messages that I need to clear out.
Yeah, all right. So we'll save Slack for another day because there's a lot to talk about with Slack. But I on reading of Superhuman, I was sold. I was like, this is great, $30 a month. It's a lot of money, but I probably spend a couple hours a day writing and sending and reading and filtering email. So it is, and the founder's pitch is essentially, it's a big chunk of your workday, and then it kind of turns sideways. So maybe explain to us why Superhuman is maybe super bad.
So I'd heard all this buzz about why it was amazing. I have friends who are crazy fanboys about the product. But then I follow Mike Industries at Mike Industries on Twitter. His name is Mike Davidson. He's a VP of partnerships, I think, at Envision. But before that, he was design at Twitter. So he started tweeting things about how Superhuman is adding tracking pixels on emails. And then a few days later, he published this very long blog post that we'll link to, basically just calling them out and saying that there are massive implications that make this a very deeply flawed product. So the way tracking pixels work, it basically shows you, the sender, when the recipient opens the email. And now people who have sided with Superhuman on this issue would say, oh, there are tons of companies that do this, like HubSpot, Yesware. If you've ever worked with a sales team, they do this all the time. And what Mike, I think, very astutely pointed out is that it's basically something that you opt into. And in Superhuman's case, it was on by default. And second is that Superhuman took it further by actually showing location with the tracking pixel. And he basically goes on to talk about how, it could be really used for dangerous, creepy things. You can imagine maybe a stalker ex-boyfriend who now knows, because of the email that he sent me that I didn't reply to, but maybe opened in Florence and Venice, that I'm abroad and overseas.
So I guess it seems like you're deeper into the he said, she said of this than I was as a reader, because my first reaction was I read, Mike seemed super pissed off. I wanted to dig in, did they work together? He seemed to come at this like Superhuman had a surreptitious strategy to gather all this location data that they were stealing from everybody, and that made them super evil. But then the next chapter was the CEO of Superhuman responded, I thought, pretty honestly.
Yeah. He just came out and he said, I acknowledge all of these criticisms, and one, I'm really, really sorry. He did not realize that the location data could be used in a really harmful way. And the fact that he led with that, an apology, I thought was A+. And then, the punchline is he basically says that they're changing their roadmap. And they turned that around pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I thought his answer was so over the course of the read, the New York Times, super awesome, then Mike Industries, super evil, and then the CEO responding with a whole list of, we're responding quickly and making these changes, which seemed to me less defensive and more I'm trying to think of a 10-penny word, and all I can come up with is honest, but more honest. Oh yeah, we guess. Now, was that disingenuous? Did he not understand how theoretically evil what he was doing was? Did he make a mistake?
Yeah, I think he was honestly trying to solve a problem, got excited about the solution that he and his team had designed. And this, for me, is a great case study in terms of how I would love us as an industry to engage with each other in dialogue to build better, safer, more responsible products. Mike Industries has no vendetta against a company. And I think it was just important to call out that, hey, developers, hey, product people, you have a responsibility to your users to catch these things. And if you don't, then at least have the humility to listen and then change.
So let me just read real quickly the 5 things that Superhuman CEO said. He said, we've immediately stopped logging the information from new emails effective immediately. We're releasing a new app version today that no longer shows location information. We're deleting all historical location data from our apps. We're keeping the read status feature but turning it off by default. And we're prioritizing building an option to disable remote image loading. like guilty, guilty, guilty is charged. We're fixing all of it.
Yeah.
Now, but this gets to a thing you've talked about a couple of times on the pod before, which is this idea that developers need to start to think about a code of ethics and a set of responsibility that isn't just because we have superpowers, we can do whatever we want. Explain that a little bit, because you've thought about this a lot.
Yeah, I mean, when doctors pass their exams and they finish medical school, they take a Hippocratic oath, and it's basically them saying that as professionals, they recognize that they have an obligation to act in the best interest of the people who they're serving. So there's not like there's a new precedent, right? And I just think that with developers, it's just as important, because developers are writing the script for the future. They are writing code that is touching millions of people and affecting every single industry across the globe. And so I think having them acknowledge that the work that they're doing is impactful and should be used for good would help all of us, I think, in the long run.
Which brings us to chapter 2, and a maybe less happy ending version of that story, which is GrubHub. And I confess I didn't exactly understand. So this is an article from newfoodeconomy.org. GrubHub is buying up thousands of restaurant web addresses, and that means mom and pops can't own their own slice of the internet. Explain that.
So say you're a small business owner, Steve's Pizza Shop on the Upper West Side, and you use the service GrubHub. You know nothing about how to build a website, but you want to use GrubHub because they help you get your food deliveries out, and they give you a platform to market your business. GrubHub basically then is buying a domain that is like Steve's Pizza Parlor.grubhub.com and operating a website that looks like your business on the internet. And so that might seem harmless, but in the instances where there are businesses who do want to maintain their own web presence, they're now competing with GrubHub, which actually has a stronger domain authority and in some cases was outranking the official business listings or business websites. Anyway, this is like a crazy growth hack. Like, for all the stuff I could talk about with developers being responsible, I think marketers are just as culpable and should probably also be more mindful of the things that they're opting into.
So, are they buying domains? So if I'm doing,
they bought 27,000 domains.
But is it stevespizzaparlor.grubhub.com or is it stevespizzaparlor.com? Were they buying my name, or were they buying my name under their domain?
They were buying. Let's see if I can get the exact URL. Yeah. You might have to
Yeah. So it's in GrubHub's shadow page, linking to Mosher's Gourmet on the GrubHub site, right? Mosher's Gourmet, I guess. I guess I get them buying domains. If they're sending traffic to you, it's. But this gets to, going back to the Superhuman story. I mean, this gets to exactly the question, which is good or evil. Was this GrubHub saying, hey, we want to help our brands, have good-looking websites and we're going to help them sell more food? Or is it really we want to usurp, or we're going to start cross-marketing using their domain to sell other things?
I actually want to say that this was an instance where GrubHub was trying to think of a growth strategy, and they had their best interest in mind. And the reason why I come down on that side versus saying having the best interests of the small business owner at heart is that small business owners didn't know that it was happening.
Yeah. Okay. So then the LA Times came out with GrubHub's response, which was dramatically different than the Superhuman response. They said, Facing fury over fake websites, GrubHub says restaurants have it wrong.
Yeah, so GrubHub responded and they said, there is something in our terms of service that says that when you work with us, you are giving us permission to publish content that that represents your business. And so no harm, no foul. And that's their stance. And so I think at the end of the day, it could be another, he said, she said kind of scenario. But what this speaks to is this larger concern around consolidation, big players, big tech platforms, and sort of smaller individuals or smaller players potentially not even having a chance when it comes to owning a slice of the pie, so to speak.
The Steve's Pizza Parlor pie.
Yes, exactly.
By the way, maybe Steve's Bagel Bakery, Pizza Parlor, not so much. But all right, so the last chapter in this little journey we're going through is this change that Google's making in how they label ads. Which, I have a personal take on this. It used to be that if you went looking for something at Google, the first page, there was an ad somewhere, but the first page was mostly relevant, high quality research results. And now often the first page is all ads, which means somebody's cutting in line saying there might be a better actual answer to the question you're asking, but we're going to pay to get on that first page, to the point at which it becomes harder and harder to find authentic search results on Google.
Yes, and as digital marketing has become more sophisticated, ubiquitous, there are digital marketing courses taught in college now. That was not necessarily true when I started my career more than a decade ago. Gaming the system, whether it's paid search ads or search engine optimization, which is basically also gaming the not paid slots on the first page of Google, it's really, really competitive. It's increasingly competitive for sites to get visibility. And Google is incentivizing people to spend more money.
So when you are searching for a company that you're looking for, it's not a search, you're looking for, Best Buy. Not sure why you do that, but let's assume for argument's sake you are, and you type in Best Buy into the search bar, and the first thing that comes up is an ad is a paid Best Buy result. Do you, for a moment, flinch with your finger before you hit it, knowing that as opposed to a search result, you're clicking on an ad, which means Best Buy is paying for that click, or you pass that, or you're like, whatevs?
You know what? It actually depends. I mean, I'm a marketer, so I'm like such a nerd about this. Like sometimes if it's a company where I know people work there, I don't click on an ad because I don't want them to spend the $2.20 on that click.
Yeah. Well, by the way, it's good. I'm glad to hear you say that, because I feel the same way. I'm like, if I already know where I want to go and I'm willing to see the ads in the sidebar to pay Google for their search, I shouldn't have to pay, excuse me, I shouldn't have to hit up Best Buy, even though I don't have any sympathy for them, $2.25 or whatever, just because I want their URL in my search bar.
Yeah, I think the exception to that, and this is super nerdy, is sometimes that the ads do link to, say, a landing page product that they want you to see first, in which they don't feel bad.
There's a difference between paying for the laziness of a link and for an ad which has some relevance. All right. So net, if you look, there's a graphic for those of you who are watching the video as opposed to listening to the podcast. There's a graphic of how ads on Google have changed since, back to 2007. It's pretty dramatic.
It's crazy. I mean, the search pane panel, it used to be colored pastels, green, blue, yellow, and with each iteration, especially the latest one, it's looking closer and closer to the organic or unpaid search results.
Yep.
The latest version of Google Ads is basically a non-shaded box and it's just black text. So there's not even a color distinction.
Yeah. All right. So let's agree for the purposes of this podcast that we're sending a little negative zing in Google's direction. Like, yeah, it's a little uncool. Like, and by the way, Google's not the only one. You're seeing more and more on Amazon. It makes me crazy. You go to buy something, and it used to be that the organic, although they never called it that, results were clear and evident, and now more and more big chunks of the Amazon results are paid, which bums me out. But save that for another day. All right. So moving to the backyard, we have a few minutes to talk about gardening. Alexa,
Just led me on a crazy rabbit hole, Steve. I clicked this link, and next thing you know, like 20 minutes of YouTube content later.
yeah.
Robot watching.
Yeah. So, are you a gardener by any chance?
I'm not, because I live in New York. Where
Well-
am I supposed to get access to land?
Well,
Concrete
little
jungle.
roof garden. There could be a roof garden. There could be a backyard. So I am not a gardener, but my mother-in-law is, and she has a great big garden in upstate New York. And so I immediately saw this Roomba for your garden and thought, I don't know, maybe she'd like it. Maybe it would help her with weeding. This is a IEEE Spectrum article about a robot weed puller, solar powered, super environmentally friendly robot weed killer. It does look very much like a Roomba. And there's a video which we'll share with you in the show links. My first reaction was there are things robots are really good at and things robots are really not good at. They're proving for Amazon to be pretty good at, pulling packages off a shelf and putting them on a pallet. When you get to things like plants, my immediate reaction is, won't they just end up kind of mauling the garden?
So I actually thought this was really cool. Like I don't know if this one particular model is close to where it needs to be, but I've spent a lot of time in recent weeks at vineyards and like wine technology and being able to separate grapes from vines and seeds from grapes. Like forget AI or forget like robots, like there's technology being used at a large scale to do these things. And so it's actually cool to think about it happening in a consumer way that's accessible to us. Like I'm a fan, I can see it.
So wait, you saw automated vineyards?
Yeah, I mean, you can see sprinkler systems, you can see large format pickers. Like there are times where they have people come in to pick the crops, like the grapes off the vine, but there are also machines now that do it.
I did not know that.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that would be so here was where the robot weed picker kind of went sideways for me. They show in the video it's this little cute little green plastic thing with little round wheels, and it rolls through the garden and it kind of feels its way around. And if something's over a certain height, it decides it's a plant, and if it's under a certain height, it decides it's a weed. And it has a little kind of mini weed whacker. It doesn't suck them up. There's no bag. It just basically mulches the garden with little whacked little garden weeds. I was good with that. That seemed logical to me. Did you get to the thing of how you have to protect the seedlings so that the weed whacker robot doesn't eat them?
Yeah, it was almost like, okay, we'll save you time here, but now you have another job.
Right, which is putting these little metal barricades around all your growing little, still weed height, but wanting to be. And I was like, really? You have to build a little wire mesh thing around the growing plants? That seemed to me pretty labor intensive.
Yeah.
And not so charming.
2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of thing.
So I wrote a blog post that comes out this week on Media Post about the things robots can't do. And I wrote a lot about the tradesmen that are working in my building this summer, redoing the hallways. Extraordinarily detailed, getting the lines right in the new molding and getting the carpeting perfect and getting the ceiling re-spackled and then and I look at this human craft where every hall's a little different and every angle's a little different. I'm like, it's going to be an awfully long time before you send a robot down the hall and it tears up the old carpet and tears up the old molding and puts in new carpet and paints and puts up wallpaper. Like, I don't see that as a robot job. There is a gap for me between things that are easily replicable and things that require human craft.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And shout out to the guys who are working in my hall, because they're doing an amazing job and working very diligently in the heat. Have you ever seen anyone install carpeting?
Yeah, like years ago.
It's a really hard job that requires you to jam your knee into this stretchy thing. And anyway, with that, fan of the robots, but maybe not of the garden robot. Yet. Well, everything in due time. And with that, we are rapidly running out of time. So if you find yourself in a vineyard with automation, though, make some video. That would be fun to see. And then bring home a bottle.
I will do that.
All right. So the summer rolls along. More Future Forward next week. Until then, Future Forward. Rock on.
See you next week.
See you next week.